Hi, my name is Frank Schaefer, and I grew up in a fever pitch evangelical right wing home led by my father, Francis Schaefer, who went on to become friends with President Ford, stayed in the White House, became part and parcel of the Republican Party power structure, very much as the so called religious advisors are to Donald Trump today, who have access to him and can whisper into his ear a quid pro quo, as it were, for getting evangelical votes, which today, following my father's lead in the 1970s and 80s, and my lead as his nepotistic sidekick back in those days as a young man who had been groomed to take over his ministry, is to make abortion the litmus test of acceptable policy for evangelicals. And of course, with that goes their homophobic agenda, anti-gay rhetoric, and all the rest of it. That brings us to something that is going on today when you look at Attorney General William Barr, who is busy trying to muddy the legal waters around the impeachment process against Donald Trump. William Barr is a conservative, far-right Roman Catholic activist, a Roman Catholic first, an American second, a right-wing ideologue first, someone who swore to uphold the Constitution second. And in his moral framework of thinking, it is okay to lie, cheat, steal, and bully on behalf of this philandering, adulterer, thrice-married president who gropes women, who has used his power to try to investigate a political opponent through a foreign country and all the rest of it. Because in William Barr's ideal world, we would be in an autocratic theocracy, a kind of American version of the papacy, if you like, that would reflect his and conservative white evangelicals' views of white nationalist power and what is appropriate in terms of who is in power. He gave a speech at Notre Dame University that was passed over by much of the mainstream media until quite recently, but I knew exactly what was going on and called him on it at the time. And in that speech, he talked about nefarious dark forces of secular liberals and humanists who are trying to undermine Judeo-Christian values and all the rest of it. And this page is ripped directly from the writings of my father, Francis Schaefer, who in his last book, A Christian Manifesto, called for the violent overthrow of the U.S. government if it did not change its policy on legal abortion. I would say to a lot of my more secular friends who grew up in more liberal households, you have no idea how serious these folks are. And when you see someone like William Barr doing what he is doing, you have to understand that for him, this is an issue of religion, not of politics. This is an issue of faith for him that he is defending, not politics. There is no logic or rationale to what he's doing any more than with the white evangelical leaders like Ralph Reed, Jerry Falwell Jr., Franklin Graham, and all the rest of them bring to the table. Ann Lotz Graham, Franklin Graham's sister and Billy Graham's daughter, the evangelist Billy Graham's daughter, went so far as to appear on the Jim Baker show, this discredited right-wing loony who spent 8 years in prison for fraud in his, quote, evangelical tax-deductible work, went so far as to go on his show and say she understood why Trump had allowed Russia to take over our base in northern Syria after we got out, because it was paving the way for Russia and Iran, Gog and Magog in the Bible and biblical prophecy as she sees it, to attack Israel and destroy Israel and kill the Jews in order that the fulfillment of prophecy of Jesus returning to earth would come to pass. This is how crazy these people are. So when you look at William Barr, you have to understand that his agenda is not an American political agenda. It is one of religious wars carried on by other means. It is one of the Crusaders who attacked and destroyed Constantinople on their way to Jerusalem back in the 12th century. It is the policy of the neo-fascists in Germany who paved the way for Hitler, and the traditional anti-Semitism of Lutheranism and German Roman Catholicism. It is out of the Dark Ages, quite literally, not used as an expression, but as an actual historic period before the Renaissance, before the Enlightenment, before the turn to science. This is the world William Barr inhabits in his other brain, not his policy brain, but the one that now informs him. So when you say, how can William Barr be doing this and selling out his country? How can evangelical leaders embrace this man who puts children in cages at the season of nativity when we think of Jesus with no place to lay his head after he is born in a manger in a stable? It is because it is not a political issue to them. It is a political issue only in the sense that this is now a war of religion against the Enlightenment, against science, against fact and evidence carried on by other means. It is the same war carried on by evangelicals who do the bidding of the oil company and the coal companies when they say there's no such thing as climate change, or if there is, it certainly is not man-made. To understand this moment in history, we have to understand that there has been a civil war launched against the American state by religious fanatics who are using a fool named Donald Trump to achieve their ends. Thank you. My name is Frank Schaefer.